Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Channel Talks. Scotty, welcome back.
Thank you.
Dan, welcome for the first time. Very, very excited about exploring the brave new world, if you like, of the MSP and how much we're listening about what the role of the listening to in terms of what the role of the MSP is now. In particular, where it sits in that new relevance of channel ecosystems and that legitimate go-to-market of an ecosystem. And in particular, using the contemporary automation tools that are around, the SaaS tools that are around to help them survive and thrive. And there's no better person to talk to than Dan Tomaszewski, who's currently the Executive VP of Channels at Kaseya. Welcome, Dan. Dan's fame actually comes from living in the MSP world, working and running MSPs for a while, and developing what is now almost ubiquitous, which is the Powered Services Marketing Enablement Platform, which I believe, if I'm not wrong, has helped over 7,000 MSPs build new business opportunities, go to market faster, and of course, maintain better relevance. Dan is also the host of the Connect IT Powered Services podcast. So welcome, Dan. Scott, welcome back.
Thank you.
Scott, I will be dwelling into your recent experience in particular of exposure to MSPs and the kind of customer interaction that we're getting and their relevance, particularly in terms of them starting to look like more of a prime contractor for procurement as much as they are a service provider into their customers. So I know I've cast a huge automation net in that. I want to start, gents, by starting to explore what you're seeing, what you guys are seeing in terms of enablement platforms for MSPs, but in particular in terms of that ecosystem framework and how they can actually continue to go down those various swim lanes their customers are being asked of them. So in that context, go for it, guys. Dan, can I start with you?
Sure. I mean, look, I think when you look at it from an MSP perspective today in terms of the ecosystems and things that they're doing, I think it's really important, MSPs today, the content, I think, is really key. A lot of times content that gets put out, it's so technical, it speaks over people's heads. So it doesn't matter what platform or system you can use, because we definitely want, you should be looking at automation and doing those things, but it's the content you're putting out. Is it relevant? Is it speaking to the audience? Is it hitting the persona? Is it doing those things? And that's really one of the things that we focused on, tremendously is giving people content that's humanized, is what I say. You're not talking about backup in a backup world. You're talking about it in a normal conversation that you would have with someone that knows absolutely nothing about backup, but is looking for it. So I think, when you look at what's important today, I think you got to have really good content and then supporting that with your automation, being able to post on a regular basis, without having to log in every day, having a good CRM and list. I mean, those things I think are critical for the MSP today to really be able to go out there and drive a successful marketing on a digital world.
Yeah, Dan, that's critical. We're seeing that more and more in that the engagement of our customers to third-party SaaS applications, because they want to be able to create unsolicited proposals to go to their customer and say, I'm giving you value, I've just sold you something. And it really is important from a churn perspective. And Scott, your response to that, because you're sitting in front of some of these and behind some of these and automating the transaction so that it actually turns into money rather than just a great idea.
Well, look, I think the MSPs have struggled generally from an automation point of view and collecting data to enrich those sort of offers and explanations around backup or whatever it is. The work we've been doing just recently is a lot about capturing install base, because without that, they can't do some of the offers they want to do with the customer base because they simply don't know what the customer base has. And, we've been slotting in with all sorts of different platforms to make that data more rich so that the offers, rather than broadcasting back up to someone who's already got it or someone who doesn't need it, you're broadcasting it only to the ones that actually have that kind of hole in their offering.
Yeah, and Dan, you talk about content, and I wanted to look at that for a bit, because even in the in the world of Kaseya, where we're talking about Datto, IT Glue, Rapid Fire, Unitrans, Spanning Cloud, True Methods, ID Agent Graphics, Rocket Cyber, and probably some that I haven't. That's a lot. That's a lot to take to a customer. So there would be a lot of campaigning involved, but there would be a lot of cross architecture, reference architecture, upsell opportunities. So the proposal would come from you as to this is what you should do in terms of your installed base, and then it needs to be automated. How do you guys manage all that, particularly from a content point of view, which is different, even though it is data, it's different from the transaction data point of view?
Yeah, so look, it's really important when you think about it today. An MSP typically isn't selling products on their own. Typically, they're looking at it as, hey, I want to sell my complete solution. So really, we have the sales sheets, the infographics, the decks you need for each individual product to be able to help you go to market if you are going back or you want to cross-sell it to existing customers or you do those things. But what we're finding is most of the industry, when you go and have your solution stack, you're not selling just a network assessment. You're not selling documentation. That's a part of your bigger picture. So really what we focus on now is how do we help you, the MSP, actually sell your entire solution? Because if we can help you sell your entire solution, yeah, there may be other vendors involved or products that we don't do or things like that. But at the end of the day, we know that the products and services that a customer has with us is going along for the ride. So how do we help that MSP go in and deliver great content marketing, thought leadership, and get that customer to a point where they're having the conversation with the MSP? That's really where we see the victories and MSPs winning, is teaching the MSP to get to that point. Because if we can get people to recognize it and come in and have a conversation, now that MSP is walking out the door with all their solutions, getting passed versus just trying to sell one or two individual.
Yeah, and it talks exactly to what I was referring to before, what we're seeing, where the MSP is almost a prime contractor of everyone's procurement, including the services that they've created and presenting to themselves. Scott, I know you're seeing that more and more. You're not allowed to be modest here. I mean, what we're seeing is over $2 billion worth of transactions being managed on the platform across 850 plus vendors. That talks to that. So how do you manage all that? How do you manage the transactions? Or we're talking about that's coming from vendor, distributor, and MSPs and service providers and VARs. But where does the transaction side sit in terms of a go-to-market where, like Dan's platform, for example, is creating the demand, creating the primary demand for an upgrade, a cross-grade, a sell, a new solution?
Look, I think, Nick, the classic problem has been what they're automating. So even though Dan's organizations and ours are going into resellers and MSPs at a different level, there's some that are still sort of grappling with old ERP systems. I mean, they haven't even got their financials really, their financial house in order. That's probably, the number one advice. I wouldn't buy anyone's platform until you've got that ERP or at least bookkeeping, if you're a small MSP, done and dusted. Because if you can't count, the money, you're never going to get anywhere in the first place. Then you start to surround it with platforms like both of ours. And really what we're trying to do is trap all the transactional data, make sure that the resellers or the MSPs are not missing out on opportunities in the install base, and then launching across the product lifecycle piece so that they don't miss the next upgrade, cross-grade, upsell, but actually have the underlying data, contract dates, serial numbers if required, etc. And that's all honed into their ITSM systems. So we're trying to actually get this clean data set, which I know is almost impossible, but it can be done better with all of our platforms interconnecting so that there is one source of truth across all of them.
Yeah, which both of you are talking to an important point right now, which comes across virtually every conversation that I'm having, Dan and Scott, and that is churn, which is another way of how can I also not just expand my business, but keep my business. Ironically, I keep my business by expanding my business in the same customer, but I need to give them reasons to every time. And then your platform gives them reasons to every time. But unless they can be transacted, then sometimes that fast go-to-market can go away. What are you both seeing in terms of speeding up the transaction process once a decision is made, and making sure that it's frictionless? Because a big stop outside of IT, which can get into the way of a decision, let's forget that for a minute. This has been made and needs to be frictionless. What are you seeing? What platforms are being integrated? I'm really digging into your experience here, because expand sales and renew and extend sales, especially renew sales, are a big deal for our audience, and I really want to go into that for a bit. First, from the create the marketing opportunity, if you like, and then Scott, how do you then turn that into a sales opportunity?
Yeah, I think from a marketing opportunity, MSPs have got to be on the education mode and not in the sales mode. So look, whether it's if you have an existing customer that churns and goes to another MSP because there's a better service or better product or something that you're just not doing, that's because you're not having quality relationship time with your customer. You're not understanding their business and what's going on. What's really important in today's world is that you have meaningful conversations with your customer, and you have to make sure that you're demonstrating the value of what you're providing. You know, it's one of the analogies we use is most people don't know what hot water heater brand they have inside their house because it just works. When do you know that brand? Is when it goes bad and it's not providing hot water anymore, and you understand it. Well, think about that from an IT perspective. If you're that customer that's sitting out, you know, and our stuff is always working, things are going great, are you still in front of them? Are you still there letting them know what you're blocking, what you're tackling, and what you're doing, and demonstrating that value? So then they understand the brand to the value. You know what I'm saying? Like, so many times we just think everything's running great. They're not having any tickets. This is great. I don't need to go talk to them. No, it should be the opposite. You should be having meaningful conversations, building that pipeline, looking at other projects, and really demonstrating the value with them.
Okay, Scotty, can you respond to that with the view that with a lot of our customers, there's a really long tail that could come from a marketing campaign, and you have to automate it. So you're not going to get that meaningful conversation with a significant number of potential prospects and customers.
Look, Nick, let's take apart the churn bit for a minute. The MSPs have got a number of challenges with vendors, and there's two distinct spaces. There's cloud, and then there's classic renewals. Literally last week, we set up a new MSP, and their manufacturer broadcasts the renewals base, or what they know about it, to all of their distributors in play and all the resellers. So everyone's got everyone's record effectively. So what we did is we moved their renewal cadence another 30 days earlier. So they were already on the front foot with their customer before any of their competitors sniffed out that there might be a renewal opportunity because of the nature of this broadcast. So that automation piece is critical in trying to reduce churn on just an annual maintenance basis. On cloud, you've got to do that every month. And how do you get your arms around, you know, massive Microsoft or AWS files or whatever cloud consumption company you're dealing with? So, you know, we build the tools to be able to ingest those files very, very quickly, populate ERP, get the invoices out the door, find all the credits, deal with all the credit piece, and then let them move on to the next part, which is creatively upselling. Because if you don't, TSIA, I can't remember the number, but if you don't upsell during the life of that contract, the chances of renewal are a lot less. So that's the piece on the churn. On the marketing piece, you know, automation, I mean, you know me, automation's everything. At the end of the day, on long tail in particular, if you're an AV company, and you're dealing through global channels and it's $200 for an AV renewal or whatever it is, people just simply don't have the time to pick up the phone, because at 5 or 6% margin, they've lost money by literally picking up the phone and wasting time on it. So you've got to hyper automate that entire long tail, that high frequency, low value renewals base. And we've seen a huge amount of success doing it with the channel involved, not breaking the channel apart, which is, you know, some of the manufacturers think that once they've got a sale, the renewal's ours, so we'll just do with it what we will. We try and keep that channel transaction intact, and so everyone stays in touch with that customer, which then reduces churn.
Okay, so I want to go into a bit more detail here, because I'm hearing from both of you things like education mode and meaningful conversation, which I completely agree. That's exactly what we're all supposed to be doing, because we're supposed to be trying to give values, give someone something that they can't do without, and continuously doing that, never ending. So I would say that in today's world, what you're both offering, and I'll give you both a chance to respond, what you're both offering is true custom success platforms. Would you call what you do, Dan, a true customer success platform?
Yeah, I would, because we're looking at it with that MSP from start to finish and then maintaining. I think you always have to build a plan. You can't just buy a product or a solution and just figure it out on your own. We want to help you figure that out. What's a good go-to-market strategy? What's your packaging and your pricing? What should it be? We've done it. We'll actually go on calls with you and help you, support you. So that way you're not out there figuring it out. We can help you and do it with you. I think that's what really differentiates it. And that's really where I think of it as a success platform, or is because if we can do that correctly, and you see the language to use in a proposal, when you're out giving a proposal, like, how to speak to it and like really be able to add that value, and you start to see success, it's replicated. And then you replicate that on your next one and your next one and your next one. And we've taught them the in our language, MSP success and how we can get you there. So 100%, that's what we're focused on. And I think it's what really makes the program successful is that we meet you at where you're at and what maturity level you're at. And the program can grow with you from that point forward.
Yeah, I'll quote you, MSP success. We're hearing that so much more. And it relates to help me be the one contact to my customer, because they're moving to everything in the cloud, maybe, that we're working on, services and service provision and all kinds of service provision, and it's all coming from me. I can only be successful if I give you the lot, but I also need to have partnerships around the place where they can add the value of education, or add the value of technical expertise, or add the value of fulfillment, because I don't have it, but I need all these additional touch points in my ecosystem, but I want to be the prime contractor. And when you're creating all those cross vendor, if you like, reference architectures into an installed base where they need that. Before I get you to answer the same question, I'm just curious about the uptake, Dan, on those kinds of propositions, because they just seem to be a platform you just can't ignore if you're an MSP.
Yeah, so look, I think today a challenge an MSP has, let's figure the average number we see is that they have about 17 different vendors, okay? You can have more or less, but let's say you have 17 different vendors, all giving you 17 different ways to sell and 17 different ideas, and you're the MSP sitting back there going, well, how do I put this together? And I think that's the challenge, because I heard you say, they're asking for that help. They are asking for that help. And what ends up happening is they get 17 different ways to sell an individual product, but nobody is really working on, let's help you sell your whole solution, put it into that whole solution piece. Because a lot of these guys, that's what they're focused on. And I think it goes back to that is teaching people. So we've got a lot of products. There's a lot of solutions that you can get from us. But at the end of the day, our products and solutions have to work with other things that we necessarily don't sell today. And how do we do that? We're able to coach you. We're able to guide you. We're able to, that way, you're not calling 20 people to ask for that success. Is we can sit there and say, okay, you've got this product, comparing that with IT glue and documentation and different things like that. This is how you should go to market. Let's go try and put this go-to-market plan forward. And people really appreciate that, because now they got one place, one way to do it, and one support team that can support them with that go-to-market motion. And now they're seeing their MSP and they're sitting there going, this is great. I figured it out. And you could just see those light bulbs go off as they're growing their business.
Yeah. Now, Scott, I do need you to answer that from is iasset.com a customer success platform, but coming from what Dan's been talking about creating that primary demand for an opportunity, but then what we see a lot, it then needs to be transacted, and they could all turn to nothing.
Nick, I've always seen us as a channel success platform, not necessarily a customer success platform. We're not up against sort of the gain sites of the world. And to me, if you look at a lot of the customer success piece, it's about adoption. That, you know, that really you're trying to get the CS teams are trying to get the customer to adopt more and more of, or more user count, or more, you know, expand sales of the product. So we underpin that in that we know all the transactional information flowing out to that customer, so that we can then give the tools to the MSP to be able to drive that operational piece to customer success. But you still need some focus on helping that customer use whatever technology they've bought. And to Dan's point, you know, we often say there's 30 vendors in some of these MSPs, not 17. You've got and all vendors want your MSP to transact a particular way. You know, you can end up with all this convoluted work that really what the MSP should be doing is they're the business consultant for the end customer, for want of a better term, the systems analyst, we used to call them in the old programming days, taking business initiatives or compliance or whatever they're trying to do and convert that into technology, not what the vendors want them to do, which is to walk in and sell them the vendor. So they have to step between, you know, a fine line between keeping the vendors happy and also deploying the right technologies for that particular customer, and then making sure they stay current, whether it's, you know, maintenance packages, on selling their own MSP professional services and tracking that piece of it as well, and making sure the customer's got access to that support. But again, to Dan's point, it's all about having one throat to choke, because, you know, a lot of these businesses can't afford to ring 4 or 5 different MSPs because they're buying bits and pieces off each one. They need a central place to go to really to get that support piece.
Yeah, that's I love that, because what we're starting to do is warm into this whole idea of MSP success, and that's what we're here to do today, to talk about MSP success. And I'm seeing it being discussed at the moment through the automation of opportunity creation, and then also the automation of the transaction management, which is where the powered services platform and everything that Kaseya are doing around all those multiple vendors, 12 of them, I think, and what iasset.com are doing in terms of taking that into, you know, smooth transaction, frictionless transaction, making sure it happens, making sure you can renew it, making sure you can expand and extend on it. That's all well and good, and that's a lovely little way of summarizing all that. But what I want to do now is, and you don't have to mention names, absolutely don't have to mention names, but I want to talk about best practice and have, you know, several you know, conversations, if you like, or layers about best practice, about Dan, what you're seeing from your side, and Scott, what you're seeing from your side in reciprocal to that kind of best practice, because my audience is all about tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of best practices that you can go out there and you can do, I think, but the one common thing that I'm seeing is this, is that, you know, from the COVID time, you know, when COVID started, and, you know, I don't think we're ever going to be able to say it's ended, but it's dramatically changed in the last couple of years. It pushed us to a more digital age. We need it now. The best practices is your company. There's like a couple key areas I look at. One, as an MSP, is your website current? Is it speaking to customers, or is it speaking tech speak that we all want to do because we're in the tech industry and we want to go out there and do it? If your business website today isn't sending a message to the customer that's looking for you, and you're not answering their business challenges, you're probably going to have a problem with them reaching out and connecting with you, because almost every MSP's website looks the same. They all claim to be the best, the fastest. We're all proactive. How do you differentiate yourself? Because it leads to the next part of the best practice, which is you need to be digitally relevant. You need to be on social media. You need to have your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I was actually just talking to Kevin O'Leary this morning. We were interviewing him for a thing that we're doing, and he talks about how TikTok has changed the game for his businesses. So I think it's really relevant in terms of that space is, do you have a website that then your leads from LinkedIn, social media, as you're out there, you're not trying to necessarily get a lead from, you know, LinkedIn, you're trying to bring awareness of your company. So I think from a best practice standpoint, what is your digital strategy? And does it all work? And you should have a good website that speaks to the customer, know the persona, and your social media marketing should match that. That customer you're targeting, that social media marketing should be targeted to that. to where you're driving that person to come to your website. You're now speaking their language, you're engaging them, and you get them into that buying process. And so many people probably haven't touched their website in years. They probably haven't looked at all the different things. So for me, a best practice is consistency, but making sure that you're speaking to the person that you want as a customer. Because when you get those leads, one of the biggest things, Nick and Scott, is I'll ask MSPs this, and I'll go, how's your website done? And they're like, well, I got 30 leads off of it, but they were not qualified. Well, they're not qualified because you're not speaking to who you want, and you're not drawing those people in. If they came to your website and it said, I want 25 to best IT for 25 to 100 employees, and they're a 5-man shop, they're probably going to be able to make that assumption right away that they're not the right fit. And so I think that from a best practice standpoint, I think is one of the biggest misses is people want to go generate leads and they'll focus on LinkedIn first and their website's crap. There's nowhere to go for that lead. There's nowhere to go. So once it gets there, they're like, man, is this company still in business? The last blog was from 2 years ago. Like, you have to stay relevant. So consistency with a digital marketing strategy, in my opinion, is vital. And so many people are missing the mark there. And I think that's why we're in the roles that we're doing, is try to support that function.